Welcome back to Dying Out Loud, and welcome to Season 2. If you're new here, I'll just say welcome, but I'm really glad that you're here. This podcast exists because life is tender and complicated and beautiful, and sometimes it's unbearably hard. But none of us has to navigate any of it alone. In Season 2, we're going to continue delivering those letters. We've got 52 more to go. But we're going to go even deeper into conversations about love, loss, grief, growth, and what it means to keep showing up when life changes us. Today's episode means a lot to me. You might recognize her face because she was one of the first 5 guests on our podcast back in August of 2025. It's my great friend, Jen Ripa, creator of the creative Cocoon and Thrivologie.com. And today, we're going to talk about grief. Not as something that needs to be fixed, mind you, but as something to hold, to understand, and to move through with compassion and creativity. Before we begin, if Dying Out Loud has resonated with you in any way, it would mean the absolute world to me if you would like, subscribe, and share the show. Your support helps the stories reach the people who might need them the most. And particularly, if something in today's conversation lands with you, please leave a comment. I read every single one, and if there's a way to reach back out to you, I respond to every email and every comment as well. And some of those comments, folks, are just truly amazing. All right. Take a breath. And let's begin. Jen, I know the last time you were here, you introduced yourself, but I'd love for you to do it for people that might have missed that first episode. And I'd just love to hear anything you want to share that you want people to know about you and how you got here.
Kris, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. I came to grief coaching because one of my 4 sons died of cancer in 2016. He was 16 years old at the time. And then 4 years later, I lost my husband of 25 years. And so each of those grief experiences inspired me to develop tools that I then learned how to share with other people. I had been a life coach for 8 years before Oliver got sick. And I don't know how I would have made it through each of the deaths in my immediate family without the tools that I had been assembling. I had the benefit of traveling to India when I was 19 on a study group, and that began my study of yoga. So I had a lot of different tools that I could lean on. And in the months and years after my husband's death, I just knew I was being called to support people with grief in a way that you might not be able to find just through language, just through talking, just through coaching. I knew that I needed other tools to support me in my recovery. So I trained in all of them so that I could teach them in a trauma-informed best practices manner. And then I put together a community I call the Creative Cocoon Community. It's a paid membership where we show up and we work with our grief with expressive arts, creative writing, movement, meditation, breath work, so that we can embrace the transformation that grief forces upon us, right? We are not the same person. And so just recognizing that we are, in fact, starting from scratch, um, and rebuilding a life for ourselves with as much possibility as we can muster, right? Um, and that transformational process is actually really quite beautiful. None of us would choose it, but it strips us down to the essence of who we are, and things become very clear. And in that clarity, we can create something really powerful. So I find it to be extremely rewarding to meet people in that place.
I think that's beautiful. And just hearing you share what started you down this path, obviously from a young age, you had a desire to help people and to make the world a better place, but your own life circumstances prompted you. Did you, when you started after your husband's passing, the second loss in your family, did you approach this kind of a way to get yourself through the things that you were going through? Did you know at that time that you would use this knowledge that you had of managing and dealing with your grief? Did you know that this would lead to something that you would eventually offer to other people? Or were you really thinking about yourself and your boys?
After Oliver died, the paintings behind me I painted. I started the project while he was still alive, and then I finished it after he died. I had this little art studio in town. I had a little yoga coaching art studio in my town, and I would just go and paint. And there was this blue heron that would come down the brook behind the building and just sit on a rock while I painted. And I just knew that was like a message from Ollie. So that was really for me. Like I could barely breathe. That was just I was just hanging on. And I had a little yoga studio downstairs, and I noticed that when I taught yoga and I played the gong for people, like all of my inner turmoil really calmed down and I had peace. I had this spaciousness and peace that really surprised me. So I hadn't really formulated that into anything at that time other than I'm going to teach some yoga. I began writing with a woman named Lori Wagner. She has a writing practice she calls wild writing. So I started writing with her a year after Ollie died, and that also was just for me. And then when my husband died 4 years later, it was really everything I did from then on was about, okay, so how do I translate everything I've learned into a way to support my family, right? Because you lose your primary earner and my income stream was supplementary, but certainly wasn't the main revenue stream for the family. So it was very after he passed away, that was very direct. That was very intentional. And the first new skill that I acquired was grief yoga. There's a man in California named Paul Deniston, and he walked his sister through terminal cancer. I think he had studied 5 different lineages of yoga and was a yoga teacher, but really came up with a methodology that transforms yoga, right? I was really struggling with panic attacks after my late husband died. Like I was having trouble being on the highway. I didn't really trust that I could not have a panic attack while driving. It was starting to feel really debilitating. I had given a presentation for a graphic design course. I had contemplated going back to a graphic design career and was taking a course and went to give my presentation and completely blanked, full tunnel vision, sweating, panic attack. I was having a really hard time functioning. And within 8 weeks of finding Paul and deciding to do the teacher training, the panic attack stopped. So I just each time I looked for tools that would help me survive, but the second time around, I definitely had the only study things that you can then in turn use to support other people.
A huge, I think that's a great philosophy to have. Unconsciously, I think that really has been what I've wanted to do. And I think the reason that I would love for this podcast to just continue to grow is because if people truly listen to these episodes, every single person that comes on the show is literally cracking open their heart and literally sharing their raw emotions for everyone who wants to listen, to hear. And as someone who has become, I think, completely open and honest with my emotions, I value that in other people, that desire to harness those emotions, that feeling of grief or loss. And it becomes a resilience, especially when you repackage that and start to share it with other people. So there's just something so amazing like that. And I know I will never create a version of the creative cocoon. It's a massive undertaking that you've done, and I'm so proud of everything that you've achieved so far. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to have you back on, because as someone who has personally benefited from your coaching, specifically grief coaching, I can attest to the value and the benefit that it provided me. My father passed away now. He's been gone almost 5 years. And I haven't found my blue herring or my red cardinal. And it's so confusing to me as to why I haven't found that, because my dad was really the person that raised us. Like, he was at home with us every day. He made our dinners. My mom was in school almost my entire life. And to lose my dad, who was always the voice of reason, always the person who would come and rescue you if you had a flat tire. I didn't know how to change a flat tire. My dad had to come and change my flat tire when I was a grown man of 20. And to have that person just no longer be here, I don't even have regrets about the last conversation I had. Like, I had the most amazing day with him. It was the last full day that he was awake and moving and coherent, and was such a beautiful day. And I had no idea when I went to the airport that afternoon that it was the last time that I would hug, kiss, or speak to my dad again. And if I would have known that, I might have hugged a little bit longer or talked a little bit longer. But it was really the last coherent conversation. And I honestly think he was waiting for that conversation so that he could just go to sleep because he was exhausted. And that was a really rough situation for me. And a year later, whenever we met, I was clearly still dealing with that. And I remember vividly calls when we were both students, we were practicing our coaching, and you already had this amazing gift. And I think because of you, I started looking at ways that I could continue to find joy, and I could continue to see my dad's picture in my mind and feel happy about that, and not feel sad that I lost him, but rather lucky that I got him for 76 years. I got him for 48 years. But it's then fast forward a year later, and I have my stage 4 cancer diagnosis, and the outlook was bleak at the beginning. They thought 9 months was my life expectancy, and I spent 6 months in the darkest depression of my life. And again, through connection, I was able to not only move on, but you've literally seen the transformation, Jen, the state of mind that I was in while I was trying to learn and grow and do things. And the things that you shared with me were so practical and easy, and it just makes sense. So I'd love to spend the next half hour or so. Let's talk about just really what motivated you. We heard a little bit about your personal story. What specifically led you to create the creative cocoon? Because you had Thrivologie, and it was a website that offered lots of great tips, offered your coaching services. What made you decide to create a space like the creative cocoon?
That's a beautiful question, and before I answer it, you said something a minute ago, and the coach in me can't let this rest. I'm
Yeah,
gonna want you to consider that the Dying Out Loud podcast is your creative cocoon. I'm just gonna
I love
invite
that
you.
idea. I love that idea.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you, because I
beautiful.
was wondering, I'm going to fail if I don't have a community, but maybe that's what this is. We're developing a community,
We're
and
inside your creative cocoon right now.
I love
So
it. It definitely feels like a safe space to me. I hope the listeners feel the same way. I know people tell me whenever I start to cry, they always start to cry. And I guess that means we are connected in some way, even if it is just over the airwaves as you're listening in your car.
yeah, you've stepped into a level of courage and authenticity and unconditional love that is contagious. So the
I think I got it from you, actually. You're the one that gave it to me.
so and it's contagious and it ripples outward. So, the work, I think we all, our souls want to do some sacred work while we have time on the planet, right? And you're doing the sacred work. So if that helps, that
Definitely does. I like
yeah,
that.
we're from the West, right? We're all programmed that nothing we ever do is enough, right? This is part
Yep.
of American culture. And so that's endemic. We can't really, we always are going to be confronting that. So if this helps with that, I just wanted to say
I
that
love
first.
that. That's a great sentiment.
And
All
then
right.
I just noticed how much better grief heals in community. Grief can be very isolating. And we feel like we have to put a mask on oftentimes. And my mask was, I'm fine. I'm fine. Because even family members would call, especially after my son died. And the things they would say were so unhelpful, even hurtful, that I became really cautious of who I would actually interact with. Friends would ask to take me out for coffee, and I'd be like, I don't know if I can trust you with what I'm holding. I
Yeah.
just didn't know if they could actually handle
Yep.
what I was confronting because I couldn't pretend at that point that I was doing better than I was for more than 5 minutes at a time. I could do right, my youngest was 5 when his big brother died. So I still had to do drop off and pickup line at an elementary school where all the mom's first question is, "How old are your kids?" Which is a beautiful question, but I didn't want to answer that question, right? Because I didn't have the composure to present it in a way that both felt authentic to me, but also a little protective of them in a way. Because that's a lot to share on a
Sure.
Tuesday afternoon. And so there's that, and then I would go to a grief group at the hospice center where Oliver had spent some time, and there was a woman there whose son had died of the same cancer, and we lived in the same town, and on more than one occasion, I would be talking about my grief, and she would interrupt me and say, "At least you have other kids," right? Like, she would try to do the grief hierarchy, and the moderator was a really beautiful woman trained. I think her degree was a licensed social worker, but she wouldn't intervene. She wouldn't stop what I felt was, like, that was rather mean in my opinion, right? Any kind of
Yeah.
grief hierarchies are not helpful. So I stopped attending the meeting. And so the only support that I found that I really trusted was a one-on-one grief therapist, and she was amazing, right? She was a licensed social worker, right? And so that's what I had. Um my spouse couldn't really talk about our son with me. He didn't he couldn't really handle seeing me that upset. And so I just felt really isolated and misunderstood. And I just wanted to be able to show up somewhere as myself in whatever form grief was showing up that day. Like to me, grief felt like trying to tame a wild mare. Like it was just so hard to know at any given moment how I was going to feel, right? A friend of mine, we got trained one of my yoga certifications at a place in our town, and she kept trying to get me to go to yoga. I was like, "But I'll be in tears on my yoga mat." And I don't really want that to be my experience, right? I don't feel comfortable sobbing in a yoga class, and I know that'll make everyone else uncomfortable, right? And so even the things that would have been really supportive to me, I couldn't go to an art class because I knew I would have wanted to come home and show Oliver what I made because he was an artist too. He was a sculptor. He was always encouraging my creativity. So I like just couldn't find places to use the supportive tools in community where grief was explicitly welcome. So I wanted to create a space where all of those tools could be used in a community. And we know there's going to be tears. We know that. And it's welcome. So that's what inspired me. My younger self really needed the space that I've created. I would have loved to have shown up in a membership like I'm holding for other people now. And of course, helping people heal their grief heals my grief too. It's an ongoing, lifelong process, right? So it's medicine for me as well. And it's such an honor to be walking with people through their transformation process.
You said something there like that grief lasts forever. Do you, even when you go through therapy or group or grief coaching or participate in something like the creative cocoon, the grief is going to still be there. You just know how to deal with it better. Is that correct? Like, I feel like the grief is never ending. To this day, I can't watch any TV shows where the father is passing away because it reminds me of my dad and I instantly will cry. It doesn't matter if it's in a theater. At this point, everyone has seen my ugly cry on this podcast. And it's really interesting though. I actually just heard from a friend who just watched the first episode of season 2, which is Anthony and I chatting. And she told me that I'm such a strong person. She really needed to see me truly break down to know that there was more than what I wear on my face and what I share. And I think that time spent with Anthony on that episode probably was maybe the biggest breakdown that I had for myself. And I even said the words that it's so unfair because Anthony and I have only known each other for 6 years this summer. And God, I would have loved to have had a lifetime of memories and anniversaries. And we're going to get 2 wedding anniversaries. It'll be a miracle if we make it to the 3rd-year wedding anniversary. And miracles happen. I know that. But I have even grief about the loss of this relationship that I would love to nurture and see what happens in 10 and 20 years. And to think that I don't get that, and to think that this amazing gift of love was given to me in the midst of a global pandemic, things like that don't just happen. Like there is some divine intervention, the universe, something was directing us to each other. And I believe that it was so that I would have made as long as I did. If I wouldn't have had Anthony, I don't know if I could have lived after those first 6 months after my diagnosis. And I think after that conversation, I might have unlocked permission for myself to actually grieve for myself a little bit. And that actually sounds very selfish to me because I'm a person that grieves for all of the people that I know and love who will be hurt and left behind. But I'm losing an amazing life and amazing people. And as much as I would love to say I'm going to rise to pearly gates of heaven, the heaven that I was taught about in Sunday school from the age of 5 to the age of 30, I don't know if that is a place. I hope it is. And I hope that whenever my eyes close for the last time, whenever they reopen, my dad's the person that's standing right there waiting for me to take me wherever it is that these spirits go. But at the end of the day, the connection to life on earth, I think I have started to grieve the loss of that already. There's so many types of grief. There are so many things that people grieve for and over. Let's talk a little bit about how you define healing in the context of grief. what does it look like whenever somebody begins to embody that?
Thank you. It's such a great question. I'm going to tack back again for a sec,
Yeah,
like
please.
I
It's the
did
coach in both
before.
of us. We
I know I
always
did. I
follow
did
up.
let certain things go. And so I just want you to know that your grief is equally valid as everyone around you, right? And it's the layers of judgment that we place on top of our grief that sometimes can make grief harder, but sometimes they can be a buffer, right? Sometimes it's easier to feel that judgment than the actual grief itself. Sometimes it's protective, um, or sometimes it's not helpful, right? You'd have to work through that. But I just want to invite you to consider that you're allowed to grieve what is slipping away from you because it's beautiful and you love it. And that grief is yours.
Appreciate that. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like self judgment. It's why should I be so selfish as to worry about myself when I have all these people that I have to take care of and be strong for and show up for? That's what I've done every day of my life. I've showed up for other people. And this is really the first time that I've had to show up for myself. And it just feels so weird and selfish and unlike who I am. But at the same time, I think whatever I opened up the other day is literally something that is gonna guide me through 2026. It's truly reprioritizing the things I've already reprioritized. It's not just making memories happen, but it's like being in the moment the whole time and encouraging everyone else to do that too. And a lot of time that sounds like, hey, how about if you put your cell phone away and let's just enjoy this time that we have together? It's definitely something I've started thinking about it nonstop because I definitely broke into something while I was sharing Anthony's letter with him. I broke into something that I don't know that I was prepared for because it was a little bit of a new feeling. And maybe that was because I finally let the judgment go. I'm certain that's what it was. That's such a great observation.
And I think grief asks us to hold complexities like that, that you have your grief and they have their grief, and they're both equally true, right? They just coexist. And one is not more important than the other. We don't have to push one away for the other one to be true. It all gets to be true at the same time. So you asked a really great question. What does grief healing look like? Or what do I
Yeah.
mean when I say healing grief? One of the certifications that I earned was through David Kessler. I have his grief educator certification, and it's a fantastic program. He's one of the grief experts. He's definitely an expert in the field. And he has two tenets that I really hold dear and I share with all of my participants in the Cocoon and my private clients is that we know our grief is healing when it no longer owns us, right? That we feel like we're back in the driver's seat of our life, right? The grief is always going to be there in some form. And there's a lot of different metaphors that people have come up with that I've seen that have helped me. And at first, your grief might feel like this big black hole or this giant rock, this blackness at the center. And sometimes it feels like that's all that there is. And it's not necessarily that it gets smaller, it's that we build this big life around it. That's one metaphor that's helpful. Some people think of the rock as shrinking. It's all subjective, right? These are metaphors. Another metaphor is carrying something really heavy. And it's not that it gets lighter, it's just that you get more skilled at carrying it, right? And I think of grief as something that walks beside me, like it's just a constant companion. And it doesn't mean that I don't feel joy. I felt so much joy since both of those losses. And I really love the person I've become. I'm so proud of my dedication and focus, and I'm a lot more courageous. And at the same time, like My son, our youngest, is now 15, and he's a musician, and he'll be at a concert because he does a School of Rock program, and they're in the house band. They just got to play at the Bitter End in New York City. And so our 15-year-old is playing all of these songs that my husband and I grew up listening to. We met in high school. And it's really hard to fully enjoy it and not be like, there he is. He's playing, right? So, like, it's always there. And I'm having a wonderful time. I'm so grateful that I'm in New York City watching my son play. I'm talking to the other parents, right? And I still would love to have my late husband seeing our son shine, right?
Course.
So it's always there, right? So that's the first tenet, but it doesn't own me, right? I can have a great day. I can have a great day and still feel the sadness, right? So it doesn't own me. The second one is you can remember your person with less pain and more love, right? So eventually, if you might remember your dad and more of the happy memories would come in, and you might feel less regret around the final conversation. And the ratio of like sad memories to joyful might shift over time. And that's how you know your grief is healing, when you start to feel more ease looking through photos or videos or finding a letter or something, and it brings you more joy than pain, then you know your grief is healing. So those are David Kessler's two. And I have a third that I hold space for with people, is that you'll genuinely appreciate being alive, right? You're grateful that you're still here, even though they're not, and you're building something that feels alive to you, right? That you have this deep sense of aliveness in you and this joy of being here. And I really believe all three of those are possible for people who are willing to work on it, right? Grief demands our attention, right? It doesn't, time heals all wounds is not true, right? We cannot just feel better, right? The most common times for people to seek out grief counseling or coaching or support is in the first 6 months or at 5 years, right? Because I think people believe that time will go by and they'll feel better. And then 5 years goes by and they realize, I don't feel much better yet because it healed a little wonky, right? Your grief will heal, but if you don't work with it consciously, it's not going to heal as well. And if you give your grief some attention and some courage and some willingness to work with it, I believe all three of those are possible for you.
When you think about the creative cocoon, what inspired the blend of tools that you use? Grief yoga, art making, sound meditation, like even writing. How do you think these uniquely support emotional healing?
There's some validation behind them. And what's interesting is there's more studies around trauma and what heals trauma than there is around grief. It's not as widely studied, which is interesting. But if you look, not all grief involves trauma, but all trauma involves grief. So you can extrapolate a lot. So there's that. There's some validated literature out there around how these things support grief healing. Second, I just noticed in myself what made it possible for me to feel like I was moving forward somehow. And then third, I had a yoga center in town, and then I would teach at another place down the road. And I ran every Thursday night for 2 years. People would come and I would do a sound bath and meditation. And then I would teach all day workshops where we would blend these tools together. There was one retreat that I held with a dear friend of mine who's a drug and alcohol counselor, and she puts on really big events. And so we combined all the tools. She did a lecture, and then we did the creative writing, the expressive arts, the grief yoga. It's a beautiful place on the ocean, so people got to walk in a labyrinth. And I remember there's this one participant who it was a man and he was extremely angry. And I just had a really hard time working with his anger, but I just gave him some space. And he came up to me and let me know that they had experienced a huge loss and that this was the first thing that he and his wife had done together to heal it and that it was profoundly helpful. Right. And so
Beautiful.
it was little things like that where I would teach these things live in person, where I got to see what impact they had on other people. And then I studied in another program which trained grief coaches to be better at the business side of things and was invited to teach in the program. And now I teach a somatics class inside the program. And so just over time, and we'll have anywhere from 25 to 50 people training to be grief coaches in the program at a time. And so seeing what things are really helpful for people experiencing acute grief has helped me to tailor what I'm doing inside my program as well. I also got a certificate in expressive arts coaching and studied with Kathy Malchiati. She's probably the leading authority in expressive arts therapy and has written so many books on trauma and expressive arts. And those two experiences helped me to experiment with different ways to combine primarily writing, art, and movement together. That's been studied by both of those mentors that I had, and I just noticed for me how much meditation and the sound bath, right? Like, I really struggled with suicidal ideation after my son died. It was really a problem for me of just really not wanting to be here, and I noticed when I played the gong, it would stop completely. There was just this peace that I think we all have this innate peace in us, right? We have this place in us that's incredibly peaceful, and we can get there with certain support. And so when you listen to the gong or when you meditate, your brain wave frequency actually shifts, and you go from your waking brain wave frequency to a much more calm frequency. And so if you can use a tool that helps your brain sync with that frequency, right? Then you have less intrusive thoughts, less anxiety, less feelings of grief, right? You just experience a sense of peace that is somatic, right? That is more intrinsic. And it can help you separate yourself from your grief because at first you believe, I am my grief. And then you get to this place where you realize, oh, my grief is something that I'm working with. I'm me. I'm the same me I've always been. Granted, I'm not the same me I've always been, right? I'm profoundly different, but I am the same person, right? And I'm going through this life. And how do I want to work with my grief in a productive way so that I can have a future that I like, or so that I can embrace this situation and extract the most love, joy, presence as I possibly can? Those tools I just believed would help people navigate really challenging situations very skillfully.
Love that. I love that. We're just about out of time, Jen, and I want to ask one more question because this was the first question that I had. For the people who would consider joining the creative cocoon, what do you say to someone who's hesitant because they feel like they might not be ready to process the grief or they might not be creative enough to participate in the program?
Thank you so much. This is something that I do run into. A lot of people who think they're ready for the creative cocoon wind up transferring over to private coaching with me. Both are really supportive and very helpful. So, a litmus test for you would be, can you listen to other people's grief stories with compassion? And do you feel ready to share your story in a group? So those are the two tests. We can be a little myopic or in early grief, and it can be really hard to hold space for other people. And so if you don't feel like you're there yet, private coaching is probably better for you. And then secondly, I just brought a little bit of my art to show you because here's something that I recently made in the Creative Cocoon, right? I was asking myself why I still spend a lot of time on my phone on the weekends instead of sitting by the fire or reading or making some art, doing things I enjoy. And I realized because the memories when I slow down are there, and you sometimes have to pass through this membrane of sad to get to the jewel that's inside. And I was choosing to sit with the gray, right? I was just choosing to not go through that opening, which does involve some pain to feel the joy. And I didn't. So we did a writing exercise first, then we did some movement, then we did some art. This is what came up in the art. And I wouldn't have known that. That's how I learned that about myself. And so I'm just showing you anyone can draw a teardrop shape and fill it in with color. You don't have to be an artist and you don't have to be a good writer. It's really just about telling yourself the truth on the page, right? We're just writing as fast as we can, telling ourselves the truth. We don't worry about grammar, choosing the right word, punctuation, sentence structure. None of that matters. And as you can see, this isn't fine art, right? We're just telling ourselves the truth. Some art, we're revealing something to ourselves. And so please don't let skill of any of these areas. You don't have to know yoga. We do mostly chair yoga, or sometimes we stand, right? But you don't even need to get out a yoga mat. Um, it's all very accessible for anyone who doesn't have any experience in any of the modalities. It's about having these tools support your healing journey so that you have more space in your life. And it's a really loving, supportive community where only helpful, beneficial comments or feedback from other people is welcome. And that's one of the things about the space that makes it very helpful is it's really well moderated so that you'll come away feeling better each time that you're in each class that you attend.
It's a safe space. I can come as my authentic self and share the feelings that I am struggling with and likely hear from other people who may have some similarities to the way that I'm handling things and maybe they have different approaches. It sounds like a huge win-win for everyone. The sense of community obviously is something that we all need in any stage of life, but certainly with something that can be as surprising and unknown as grief, having this protected space where others are holding space for you to share your story and share what you're struggling with. What a great place. And it's the reason that I wanted to have you back on because having received the benefit of working through my grief with you, I can absolutely say without a shadow of a doubt that, again, I don't even know where I would be right now. This podcast may never have come to be if I wouldn't have learned to to show up still in spite of the fact that there's so much just grief consuming me right now. Obviously, until I recognized it earlier this month, I don't even know that I realized that I was getting ready to start grieving my loss. But it's such a great program. I feel like I've been along for the ride as you were building it out. And I'm so excited that it's launched. And listeners, for any of you, again, who want to be connected with Jen, the website is thrivologie.com. You want to spell Thrivologie for him, Jen? It'll be printed on the screen too, but just in case they're just
Sure,
listening.
it's Thrivologie, and it's
Perfect.
under the community tab.
Perfect. So go to thrivologie.com. You can learn all about Jen on the website. But most importantly, go click that creative cocoon and give it a shot. You never know what the right people in the right room can do for each other. And Jen and I learned that firsthand whenever we were first paired off together in coaching school. And we still talk every Friday morning, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., because it's that important to us to keep our relationship alive. Jen, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you back again today. I'm going to wrap this up and we'll get on our way for the day.
All right. Thank you, Kris. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Always a pleasure with you. Folks, before we close, I want to invite you to pause with me for just a moment. Something in this conversation stirred a feeling that you weren't expecting, or maybe it touched a tender part of your heart. I assure you, you are not alone. Grief has an odd way of meeting us very quietly, but it always reminds us that we loved deeply. You don't need to fix anything or move on too quickly. Just notice what's here and be okay with letting that be enough for now. As we gently bring this episode to a close, I want to thank you for listening, for holding space, and for always showing up for these individual stories. And again, thank you for coming. It has been a pleasure. And I'm going to switch gears really quickly and just share something that we have been getting a lot of questions about. There will be Dying Out Loud merch coming to that website. Just be patient with us. If you know me, and I know a lot of people out there that are listening do, you know I'm incredibly picky about the clothes that I wear. So every single item, we are actually wearing it, washing it, and re-wearing it, and living in it. We want to make sure that it actually is going to be something that you can have for life. And we want to make sure that it just feels great on your body. Each piece is going to have the Dying Out Loud logo. It's going to include the cartoon version of me at the mic. And some items will also have a simple call out to the website. Most importantly, though, every dollar of the profit is going to go directly into my cancer fund, with the hopes that as I continue to research non-traditional methods for healing cancer, that I might be able to make it to that clinic in Switzerland or make it to that clinic in Mexico. So it definitely will help support me as I continue my journey. If today's episode, specifically this conversation, has really meant something to you, visit Jen's website, Thrivologie.com, connect with her, and then just continue to love, share the episodes, post your favorite episode on your favorite social network, encourage people to come and join in the conversation. As always, I thank you for being here. I thank you for listening with your whole heart, and a friendly reminder to keep showing up, because the world is always better when you